What up, crew? It's Chris Anthony Hamilton, your creative career coach here. Welcome back to the Greenlight Ecosystem podcast. And this episode, I really want to dive into the top circle in the Greenlight ecosystem, which is the vision portion. And that really incorporates you. That's all about who you are, what your vision represents, how you see the world, and then how that can turn into something that you can make your own, that either becomes a part of what you are creating every day and then what you are selling to folks. And that's anything from music to films to photographs. What is it that drives you? And, I was having a conversation with a couple of friends of mine, some artist friends of mine here in Italy. And this is what we talked about: the value and importance of that top circle, that you portion, that vision portion, that really comes down to knowing yourself and appreciating yourself and loving yourself, because it all starts from there. The other circles, the budget, the distribution, and the crew, all those things are really dependent on you knowing who you are and what you want, like from deep down inside, like for real, for real. And, I think a lot of artists, a lot of people in general really struggle with that. So the idea that if you were creating something or wanted to do something, anything that was completely independent of what other people thought, of what other people expected of you, of what other people wanted from you, something that didn't matter whether it sold or not, just something that was, your heart's desire in the truest sense of the word, that represented you as a soul, what would that thing be? And that's the kind of question that you really have to take some time with, even for me, because it still is murky sometimes, because we're always getting distracted by figuring out how we're going to survive. What do we have to do in order to make ends meet? What do we have to do in order to make our family members, our friends, our coworkers happy, to fill these voids in our lives that are practical at the end of the day or emotional at the end of the day, but are very dependent on other people. And figuring out the you is absolutely critical, I think, to what ultimately is going to be a successful life and career. And success obviously is subjective, but I find that more and more, the older I get, what success really means is contentment, being satisfied with where I'm at, what I'm doing, and finding the joy and the goodness in every moment. And that sounds kind of, that sounds a little woo, a little cliche, but I mean, it just is the truth. It really is the simple truth: is, do I like who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing in any given moment? And I think when you have that as a foundation, the other three pillars start to really become just a little bit easier every day, because you're finding joy in the search for how to satiate those other pillars. And so for me, I spend time meditating, and that's literally, for me at least, just listening to myself. I think there's a lot of uh, misconception around what meditation is or what it should be. I don't think of it as trying to quiet my mind or silence my thoughts. That's not really possible, at least not for me. Maybe that makes me a novice as a meditation person, but for me at least, what gives me the most, I think, positive impact when I think about meditation is the idea that I am putting myself in a space where I'm not being distracted, and then allowing my thoughts to come to me naturally. But my thoughts, my deepest, most inner thoughts, that are not filtered through the noise of everyday life. And that practice for me includes: a thought comes, I let it come, I listen to it, and then I imagine it as though I'm sitting by a riverbank, and each thought that comes is like a leaf. and that leaf floats down, lands in the river in front of me, and then I accept it, I listen to it, I notice it, and I allow it to float away. And then I focus back on my breathing, which is where the kind of quiet settles in. And then the next thought comes, and then I allow that to be heard and seen and experienced, and I let that float away. And then it gradually becomes more and more natural to just listen to myself, to listen to those thoughts, to listen to those inner desires, is what they ultimately are. And sometimes they're very pragmatic, especially at the beginning. It's like a laundry list of tasks, and you have to just kind of let those filter through. So that takes usually, for me, a meditation session is maybe, if I'm short on time, maybe 5 minutes. If I'm long on time, then it's maybe 10 or 15. And sometimes that first 5 minutes is all I need, because sometimes I really do just need a moment to kind of quiet the world around me and shoot and figure out what that list of tasks is, so that I don't forget things, because it's easy to miss things when we are just filling our life with busyness all the time. And so sometimes that's all I need, is just to hear myself, remind myself what I need to do for me, for work, for family, for friends, whatever. Just let that come. And then, like I said, when I have a little bit more time and when I give myself more time, I allow those thoughts to filter through. I allow the task list to come and go. And then once that has been satiated, then the real inner deep thoughts and desires start to make their way out. And that is where kind of the most useful information comes from. The opportunity to actually hear myself say what I really think in my mind, feel what I really feel inside myself, and will kind of give myself the opportunity to just be heard. Those aren't things necessarily that I have to share with other people, but at least if I know what those messages are that I'm ignoring the rest of my day, it gives me a little bit of clarity, because it gives me a little bit of perspective around why I maybe am prioritizing things the way that I am, and how I can shift my priorities based on what my inner self is really looking to accomplish, the needs that I'm trying to fill with everything that I'm doing. And then eventually, my hope for myself and for others is, once you have that practice of listening to yourself and really discovering who you are, who the you that is trying to get out is, then all of a sudden that filters through into your creativity. That honesty about who you are and what you want starts to make its way into what you are creating. The types of, if you're a photographer, the types of images that catch your eye and the types of moments that you're looking to capture, film, the type of stories that you're trying to tell, the characters that you start to invent, or the thoughts, feelings, backstories that you start to infuse those characters with, starts to become more authentic and real. And that's all about the practice. It's all about allowing yourself to be who you really want to be. Right. And then, ultimately you figure out, okay, what's the thing about me that is going to be the most relatable to people who see the world the way that I see it, who have the same questions that I have, who have the same fears and doubts that are fighting to get out of me. And that turns into a creative voice, that turns into a creative vision. And then you just follow that path. And the more that you follow that path, the more real the work gets, the more honest it gets, the more unique it gets. And when we have something that is unique to offer the world, that is valuable. And it's that value that you can turn into something that can create opportunities for you as a business. And it's not a dirty word to make it something that is that has a real monetary value. As creators, in order to be able to sustain ourselves, we have to be able to make money, right? And I think once we start to look at what everyone else is doing in order to make money, then we stop listening to ourselves in terms of figuring out what it is that we really, really want, who we really, really are, that is valuable. That that knowledge, that information, that commodity of the real you has value. It has inherent existential value, and then it can also have value in the market, the market of creativity. When a brand or an agency are looking for a director, they're considering all the various folks who are pitching for a project. They ultimately want to go with somebody that has a unique perspective, that is going to bring something unlike anyone else to the project, because they know, they understand that people pay attention when they see something new, see something fresh, see something unique. And you never know what that one aspect is going to be. When you have a brand, they of course have their own voice and vision. They have uh, a way of appealing to their audience, but they're always still looking for that secret sauce of what someone new, a new voice can bring to their brand, to their creative, that is going to attract people that maybe they haven't thought of already. And that's exciting. And you can offer that if you know who you are. Without that knowledge of self, it's going to be more and more difficult to break through, to feel at peace when the phone's not ringing, to feel at peace with your family, your friends, your colleagues, to feel at peace with your financial situation, to feel at peace with your creative process. That peace comes from the knowledge of self, that comes with the practice of asking yourself who you are and allowing it to come out. And it's a practice that I am still very much kind of getting used to. It's a practice that you have to normalize for yourself. I'm working on that also. And it's exciting to talk about it with other people who are at various stages of it, because then we kind of share our experiences of what we learn about ourselves when we do make the time to ask ourselves these questions, to quiet our surroundings in order to let ourselves kind of free up those inner thoughts and feelings, and find the uniqueness that comes with that's in all of us. And we as creatives, I think it's so important to be able to have an understanding of what makes us each special, because we do, a lot of us spend so much time comparing ourselves to one another. And that's okay, because obviously, we want to have reference points, we want to have inspiration, we want to take little pieces of things that we find interesting and relevant to what we want to say. But the truth is, we don't need that in order to be a creative person, to have a creative vision. Inspiration is in each of us. I really believe that. We are each vessels. We're like satellite dishes receiving signals from the universe. Here goes the woo woo part again. But it is really that. We're part of it. We're part of this long, ancient story that is the universe. And we each have our own chapter within it to tell. So I think it's incredibly powerful when we take that time to tell that story, to tell that chapter our own way. So that's what I hope that people will be inspired to do when we start to talk about that top circle of the Greenlight ecosystem, which is really just greenlighting yourself, your vision, your personhood, your own idea engine. What is it about you that makes you special? That's got to be the number one thing. And everything else starts to fall into place, I think, once you have that. So that's my thoughts for today. Hopefully this helps. And yeah, hopefully it will give you a chance to take some time out for yourself and to get to know yourself a little bit better. So when you do, drop some comments about your process and your journey, and hopefully that'll help some other folks as well. So that's it for today. I will see you all in the next one. Thanks, y'all. Let's get to work.